rather. He needs 5 minutes out of the 10 to just tell us something. That is Dr. Sharif Khalid Mahmood, who is an associate professor at Sheffield University, UK. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, let's welcome Dr. Sharif Khalid.
Thank you very much, and it's been wonderful presentations all through this afternoon, but I have a few criticisms as we are trying to turn things around. And if you would see, starting off with the last presenter, you know, for once I thought he was advertising Birkenstocks, right? And if you see the sole of the shoes and everything, and you look at the sort of market penetration that Birkenstock has, there's no way you can compete with them. So my advice is that try to localize your product and have a niche point. Maybe Birkenstock can buy into you because of the uniqueness you're providing that they cannot provide. So that's what you ought to begin to look at. Also with the last presentation, something very minute, but again, moving forward, I think that was on the pineapples, right? I think the extra time given was not a good point because it didn't look fair onto other people who also pitched. So we are trying to, it was a good presentation, we all like for it to have gone on, but if we decide to give someone else a bit of time because it was nicer and not, you got to meet the time, and the rules are the rules. So moving forward, I think that these are things we ought to correct, and I played with the chiefs that they would assist us in this light. Okay, to my point, under COVID, if I hadn't failed a business or run a business into the ground spectacularly, I don't think I qualified to speak on this platform of entrepreneurship. But I've been advising businesses all over the years and doing consultancy and teaching business, but I ran a business and failed. So it tells me that I qualify to speak about entrepreneurship, or for that matter. So if you look at venture capitals that have been happening in times past, in the early 2000s, so you find people not wanting to come into our space or the African space because it's great. And sometimes the words they use are, you know, Africa in and of itself is a risk. And venture capitalism or venture capitals are a risk in and of itself, so you don't need to combine the two. And when you combine them, it's more toxic. But we are succeeding. Businesses are growing. For instance, if you look at global data, I was trying to avoid not mentioning numbers, but you can't talk about investments or entrepreneurship without doing this. So if you look at the year 2022, you realize that that's according to the Association of Venture Capitals. It says that out of we had 604 African startups that raised about 5.2 billion USD, right? So this is just a fraction of the global 660 billion. Africa alone, our portion is. So we shouldn't be demoralized by this. We should rather be a motivation that there's a bigger part of the pie that we could bite into. So we have more opportunities to have a bite at the cherry because, you know, the advantage we have is that the West is saturated. We have the opportunities, we have the numbers. So how are we growing that? Okay, so now if you look at it, most businesses have come in and gone. You'd realize the Nigerian billionaire, Tony Olimelu, brought up his concept of Afro-capitalism. I know a few friends who he invested in or asked to do research and gave them funds to get them to, you know, invest in about, I think it was 100,000 businesses. Well, some have failed, some may be doing well. I'm quite interested in how we could trace back to see how they are doing. But the fundamental point, or what we fail to realize in all of this, is that IP is the new gold for capitalism and entrepreneurship. And by IP, I mean intellectual property. So in all of what we're saying, what is our intellectual property? What's your IP? What's the value of your IP? How could you sit here and sell your IP to a Chinese investor in Guangzhou? That's what we should be looking at. And these are the kind of business propositions that will bring it in, or bring in the real investments when you don't have to do brick or mortar or to run around to do what you have to do. So intellectual property is very important. And as the last speaker, who happens to be a lawyer, would have more expertise in this regard to probably, you know, guide you in this regard. But in all of what you're doing, begin to look at IP, because that is the new age of global trade. Okay, so most often than not, we hear the term serial entrepreneurs. And by serial entrepreneurs, it's emanated out of Silicon Valley. And anything Silicon Valley, is platinum talk, so we want to go home with that. But Africans, or African entrepreneurs, are being tagged as parallel entrepreneurs as compared to serial entrepreneurs. And by parallel entrepreneurs, we're talking about entrepreneurs that do so many things at the same time. Jack of all trades, possibly master of none. But that again has a, an advantage in terms of propositional value. If you're doing so many things and you understand what you're doing, you have a real advantage. So how do we convert the negative tag of parallel entrepreneurism to be serial entrepreneurs? Just because it's coming out of Silicon Valley, it seems as the best terminology. Again, this is what we ought to begin to think about. If you look at entrepreneurship, again, we make this mistake of thinking that it's for youngsters, which is why we parade people probably under 30. People are making in the 60s. People are making in their 40s. Some are making in their 50s, and some are making in their 70s. Right? If you look at research by the Hoffman Foundation, look it up. There's a good proportion of the young and the old, and sometimes the old, between the young to rate as far as entrepreneurial maturity is concerned, and getting the real investment. Bill Gates reinvented himself as a philanthropist in his 30s, right? Steve Jobs had his second go when he came to, at his second stint at Apple. He didn't break through in his first. So yes, the young blue-eyed entrepreneurs are making it, but then we need to have this combination to have that perfect mix, because the aged or those above the 40 or 50 mark still have experiences that could be shared. There could be JVs or joint ventures between these people. Again, Africa has a unique position that we ought to look at, right? We are saturated with middle-level managers who have no experience in running large corporations. And by middle-level management, they probably never signed a 60 billion merger or acquisition, because we hardly ever have any. So because of this, we have a certain deficiency. So how do we leverage on our middle-level experiences to turn things around when it comes to that? So to do this, I labeled 10 things, do's and don'ts of an entrepreneur or a Zongo entrepreneur. And here we go. Number one, do not run the anecdotes and buzzers, right? Most often than not, we hear, oh, the big buzz of what is being said in Silicon Valley or Wall Street, we run around with it. That's not how we run a business. You know your business, right? You could pitch your business. I realized that when a criticism was offered, that nobody brought their product, they all started bringing their products and putting it on the high table. Why is that? Or to the judges. The guys with the shoes could have stood up here with his shoe and point out his qualities. And that's enough for pitch. But we all joined the bandwagon of dropping our products here. The lady with the product could have stood here and mentioned all the properties, the medicinal values it's got. And that's enough a proposition. After that, you add up your numbers and you go. So there's a lot more to be done, right? Number two, know at least a good part of the full story. Most often than not, you look around and you say, okay, well, oh, he's made $1 billion. He rides a G-Wagon. I want to be like him, right? He just sold 5 mobile phones and he broke through. That's not his full story. He failed 10 businesses or 100 businesses before he could ride that G-Wagon. And if you don't know that story, you're going to fail. You know EasyJet, right? The owner of EasyJet failed about 100 businesses. And guess what? His father was the richest man in Greece. So the father couldn't fund that. If you don't have a father who can fund that and you want to be like him, you don't know the full story. You get frustrated as an entrepreneur. 3, be innovative. If you realize social media sales is a big thing that we all do, right? Friends to friends to friends. You stay up on your status, you post up things and people buy. It's because of the social connection we have. That is us as a people. You want to see a face, you want to know a name, because there's a risk attached to it. And if you don't do that, you may not be able to sell. You all know Jumia. What do you make of it? You think it's a successful business? Do you think it's a successful business? It's struggling. But you will look at it from the outside, you'll think. They listed, I think, on the New York Stock Exchange in 2019. They are yet to post a profit. They can penetrate, but that is Africa's biggest online platform. But we have a lot of challenges when it comes to this. So again, these are the things you ought to look at, right? In terms of our postal systems and the likes of that. So product is important. and product is key. Again, collaboration is important. For instance, with the lad with the shoes, right? Has he thought about having a meeting with Tony? What's his shoes? Postman shoes. Can we have a conversation? What collaboration could we have? Collaborations lead to greater efforts. 5, be abreast of time. Know what is happening. Ask yourself when you wake up in the morning, how many of you read the financial press? It's very important as a serial entrepreneur or a parallel entrepreneur. Embrace both if you can, right? How many are keen to reading the Financial Times, the Economist? If they are expensive to subscribe to, come together, contribute and do it because it'll help you. You never know when you'll get that advert. Number 6, be self-empowering. Self-help books may help. You want to read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the likes of that. But that's someone's story, remember? And that's in a different context. Not in your context within the Zongo community. So think about that. You can have some good nuggets from that, but that may not work for you. Number 7, leadership. It's a very fanciful word. These days we have different variations in thought leadership and what have you. Ask yourself the kind of leader I want to be as an entrepreneur. Number 9, put your ducks in a row. Always be ready. Register your business, have financial statements, have a budget. It's important. I ask business people to travel around the world to know what. Don't wait till you want to apply for a visa, they ask for a business statement and you don't have it. But if you do, you may get through. Number 10, continuity is important. Decommissioning of your business is not the end of it. Prepare to come again, right? The Zongo story would always be told and be ready to be at the center of it if you can lead it. So I wouldn't want to take much of your time. These are just a synoptic view of what we want to talk about. So thank you so very much. And I hope to be engaging some more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid. Thank you very much. Zattutukan shi duka ba wani tsawon magana bane. Kamata ne kana kasuwanci